Hey, this is Trav here, and just a quick reminder that this podcast relies on the kindness of my Patreons, and I would like to thank the following people: Bill, Brendan, Grant, Lisa, Mog, Dan, and Paula. Your constant monthly donation really helps out, and if you can spare $1, the link to my Patreon is in the description. Anyway, thanks for listening. Here's the show. Hey, welcome to episode 161 of Tales from the Mind Boat, the slow-moving boat ride inside the sometimes stormy waters of my mind. This is Trav Nash speaking, and thank you very much for listening to this podcast. I really do appreciate it. And today's show is all about my apparently fated meeting with my Uber driver, and perhaps I've changed his career path for the better, or possibly the worse. It's a good show, and all you need to do is sit back, relax, have a happy Easter as we set sail. So, how was your day today? Asked my Uber driver, already smiling as he anticipated my answer, as he pulled away from the curb into a side street and then made a U-turn away from the ocean and our apartment. Yeah, good I guess, I answered, and as soon as I did, I knew that I've opened a door for a follow-up question. I'm never really sure if asking about your day is just a polite version of hello, or this stranger is sincerely concerned about what state my day has been in so far. Even if that is the case, how detailed does he want me to report on it? Do I list off every hour by hour things that I've done, and how my head hurts and I've spent most of the day watching Judge Judy and playing Disney's emojis on my phone? His smiling and upbeat mannerism gave me an impression that he was a man who wasn't interested in the finer details. He was just being polite, but at the same time, I think he really wanted to know about me during the journey that we were going to be sharing together. There was this brief pause between my answer and the next question. There was a noticeable void that had to be filled by the generic dance music that was coming out of the radio and the clicking of the indicator as he made a sharp right turn. "What do you do for a living?" he finally asked. I don't know," I replied. "I don't really have a job. I just kind of make things and sometimes people buy them, but I just like making things and putting them out there, and it's probably not a sound business plan." And I don't think he was expecting this kind of answer. It's not a very straightforward answer like, "I'm a doctor," or "I'm a nurse," or "I'm a financial advisor." And then I started to remember how terrible I am at conversations and how out of practice I am. I couldn't recall the last time I actually spoke to someone outside my small mutual circle of friends, and I couldn't recall how to keep things moving along. I felt like there was an awkward pause between the lines, like a TV sitcom that has had its laugh track removed. In these situations, all I can do is really deflect the question. "So, is this what you do for a living?" I eventually asked. He explained to me that this was just what he does on his downtime. He's the owner of a cleaning franchise, one of those gyms, insert service here kind of franchises. That gym guy is a bit of a renaissance man, I imagine. He seems to be able to do anything, from cut your lawn to move your furniture when you move in and out of your apartment. He can dry clean and garden. Jim will also clean the garbage juice off your bin if you really wanted him to. There seems to be no shortage of young dreamers who want to be part of this gym's franchise. He explained to me that his cleaning was less domestic and more commercial. When I prodded him more about what sort of cleaning he does, he explained that it's basically commercial buildings, and apparently offices are the dream job to get, as it's normally clean and you're just putting papers in the recycling bin. And as he told me this, his face brightened up even more than it already was, and his smile was a knowing smile, like he had a fond memory of cleaning up daily schedules and passive-aggressive emails detailing office politics to HR. One thing I noticed during our brief encounter was he seemed generally happy. He seemed like someone who enjoys being a cleaner and he enjoys driving people around as an Uber driver, and I have a natural allergic reaction to this kind of personality. It's my pessimistic outlook that makes me want to see what is really under the hood. Moods and emotion, to me, seem like fleeting states of being. Sometimes you can be happy, and then other times you can be overwhelmed by a crippling sense of dread and hopelessness. Being forever frozen in one specific state of being seems unnatural and quite unhealthy to me. Although I'm sure there are plenty of examples of people who legitimately are happy, it's just hard for me to accept this. I think it says more about me, really, but I believe that we are more complex than we give ourselves credit for. Having said that, this guy does seem legit, and I was quite fascinated by it. I'm always open to an exception to my prior understanding, and wondered what his secret was. We reached a set of traffic lights, and again it seemed he was whimsically recalling a fond memory that is flickering behind his eyes. I asked about being an Uber driver, and wondered how he juggled having 2 jobs, and wondered if he does this just because he likes driving and meeting people. He explained that this is part true. He did like meeting new people, and he likes doing this in his downtime, because he was concerned about how much time he was wasting on Facebook. He said that when he wasn't working, he spent hours on his phone or on his computer and fell down rabbit holes of people's domestic squabbles and uneducated opinions on current events. And I kinda get that. I find myself wasting too much time scrolling through Facebook and clicking likes and ironic memes that make me laugh internally for a brief second before I scroll onto a picture of someone's cat or a hot take on the coming election. I know a lot of people take drastic measures with their concern about how much they spend time on Facebook and delete their account altogether, but personally I think it's a matter of self-regulation. You can decide how much or little you want to use it. The details that Facebook harvests from you is only because you freely post it to the world to see. The concept of time wasting as well is objective, really. You could be doing something that is fulfilling to you but a waste of time to others, and I guess it comes down to how you perceive your time as well spent or possibly wasted for your precious moments of the day. In this case, I guess this Uber driver came to the conclusion himself and made a decision to colour in the free moments with a brighter set of colours, and doing something he considered more productive. Maybe it's a stress relief, maybe it's why he's so gosh darn happy, maybe he has truly discovered the secret to living and having a happier existence, and that spending your free time driving around grumpy old men like myself is the answer. I began to prod him some more about his cleaning job and asked him if he had any horror stories, and he didn't quite get what I was asking for, so I told him that I had a friend who used to be a cleaner at a hotel that had a huge turnaround of cleaning staff, and the reason why soon became apparent is it only took him a few days to start coming into a room and cleaning feces off a ceiling fan, scrubbing it off the walls and carpet, and wrapping up bed covers caked in bodily fluids he didn't want to know what the origins were, based on the smell alone. This sparked this guy's interest and wanted to know more about why such a thing would happen in a hotel room, and I couldn't really give him an answer. The only thing I can think of is some people have dark secrets, and there must be something about staying somewhere that isn't their home that lets that darkness come out, and they feel there is no consequences for releasing whatever has been building up inside of them in more ways than one. He thought about this as he looked out over the long road ahead of us, the traffic, the used car yards, and old offices with floors for lease. He finally agreed that there are strange people out there, but if it was a job and they paid him enough, he could just get in there and get it done. And I was surprised by this and asked again for clarification that it really wouldn't bother him, and he shook his head while still smiling. It wouldn't bother him in the slightest, he said. Someone has to do the job, and he explained if they paid him and it needed to be done, better he does it than someone else, because he thinks he would do a better job. And for a moment, I don't think I've ever seen a braver man in my life. Imagined him on a hilltop, ready for battle and human slaughter of both enemies and allies ahead. and bravely charging forth, still smiling, because he has to do what he knows in his heart is right, even if that means killing someone, or maybe just washing down brown stains on a hotel ceiling. I don't really know why, but it made me think of some podcast I listened to a while back about this guy who was out of work for ages and his favourite movie was Pulp Fiction. He particularly liked Harvey Keitel's character, Winston the Wolfie, a super cool character who comes in and does what needs to be done to dispose of a dead body and clean the brains and blood that might implicate John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson in a crime. The guy in the podcast thought he could do this job and basically started a business just doing absolutely that, working with local law enforcement in America and cleans up after crime scenes after they've been documented. He apparently has already developed a huge client list and said he could retire early than he ever thought if he keeps getting the endless amount of work that keeps coming through. And for some reason I relayed all of this to my smiling Uber driver. This intrigued him to ask questions about a job that I really didn't know much about. Questions like, how do you even get into this line of work? Do you have to be a police officer before you can apply for this position? Who do you contact? And would you need prior knowledge about moving and disposing of bodies? All of these questions I didn't know. All I could do was merely speculate that I think it would be a hard job to get into, but I doubt many people would want to do it, let alone seek it out. I told him it would probably take a very specific type of person who could deal with a terribly gruesome crime scene and just go about their job and not come home and fall into a fetal position and question the true destructive nature of our kind. You could tell he was now thinking about this as a legitimate career path. There was caution in his voice now, as he said it would take someone who was pretty messed up to begin with to do such a thing. And I thought about this and said not necessarily. I mean, a surgeon does life-threatening operations every day, and you wouldn't think that person is on the verge of falling into a cloud of madness and completely breaking down. I also added that some people can just go into work mode, even if it's some mundane job, working in a news agency or a service station, or even serving coffee to countless amount of sleepy people in the morning going to work. You just kind of learn to shut your brain off and go into autopilot and just get done what needs to be done without having to think too deep about it or be aware of the real situation you're in. You're just hanging in there till it's time to go home again, and there is security that you will be paid at the end of the week to keep going a little longer. You seem to get what I was trying to say and was nodding now while looking forward beyond our destination. The little GPS map showed that the vehicle was not far now, and soon this ride will come to an end, and just as this conversation got more interesting. He finally said that he thinks he could do that job, and I would probably think he's a weird person for saying so, but I told him that I didn't. I didn't think that at all. Someone has to do the job, and I'm sure he'll be paid pretty well for doing something like that. And then he began to wonder how heavy a dead body was, and if he needed a team of people to lift it out like a funeral. I told him that I didn't have any prior knowledge of transporting a dead body, but judging from what I've seen in more serious crime dramas and documentaries, they apparently are very heavy, but sometimes adrenaline of someone who might have just committed an act of murder might be able to move it in a panic for survival. Then I added that more than likely the police would have moved it if it was part of an investigation, and probably after they have taken all the evidence from the crime scene. It's only then that you would have to come in and clean up the mess left behind. He nodded again as we pulled up to the last set of lights that just went red, and silence between us gently blanketed the nervous tension that was there at the start of the ride. The radio played a commercial for a store that sells ferns. The kind of radio commercial where the owners don't hire a professional voice actor and just read the commercial themselves in a strange, unnatural monotone. The voice almost sends you to sleep, and perhaps that is what the whole point is. Maybe they're just trying to hypnotize you into a lull to buy their ferns. The driver probably wasn't paying attention and wasn't thinking about ferns. His head now, thanks to me and my stupid ideas, was now full of dead bodies and crime scenes, brains on the back of couch cushions and bodily excrement on hotel walls. Throughout all of this more macabre talking of making money off the dead, he still seemed pretty happy and upbeat the whole time. I thought maybe he might actually be the right fit for such a job. Maybe he'd be someone who wouldn't be inevitably deeply psychologically scarred by the horrors that you would probably have to endure on a daily basis for a paycheck at the end of the week. The blue dot of my destination and the blue sprite of the car were finally overlapping each other on the GPS as the green arrow on the traffic light finally indicated that it was safe to do so. We pulled into the narrow street with even narrower parking on either side, where two modern futuristic looking white apartment blocks loomed on either side. Apartments that looked something straight out of Astro Boy and the future city that a robot boy with a jetpack, red boots would weave in and out of. Apartments that looked completely otherworldly to the old historical colonial houses that were scattered around them. I told him he could stop anywhere on the left, and he took this as a sign to suddenly bring his vehicle to a stop right where we were, with a tail of cars waiting behind us that made me anxious to get out and not take up too much of anybody's time. I thanked him for driving me, and he leaned over the driver's seat to shake my hand and gripped it tightly, and was completely sincere when he said that he was glad he met me, and I have now changed his life for the better. He said that he was going to be the wolf guy from Pulp Fiction, and I said that was cool, I guess, but I didn't want to be responsible for such a dramatic career change. He assured me that all things are meant to be, and our driver-passenger meeting was fated to be. The information I gave him from the podcast I listened to was something that would change his life for the better, and said it would most certainly be something he would be great at. The car behind us beeped the horn, and when I looked back, a woman of kids slapping each other in the back seat banged on her steering wheel, and she opened her palms and had a gaping open mouth with a face that said why without saying a word. The driver eventually let go of my hand and thanked me again. I stepped back on the sidewalk and he drove on down the narrow street, releasing the backed up cars behind him. He made it to the roundabout at the end and came back the way he came. As he passed me for the final time, he wound down his window and thanked me again, now happier than he already was when I first got into the car. The turning arrow went green again, and he drove off back the way we came. I turned away and wondered if I've done a terrible thing and maybe I've changed someone's career for the worst. I don't want to be responsible for someone who once cleaned up papers in an office to walking into the aftermath of some kind of cult mass suicide. I turned away and walked up the steep set of stairs to the entrance of my doctor's surgery at the bottom of the apartment and entered through the sliding doors. The waiting room is pretty empty except for a few mothers showing their kids games on their phones for them to be occupied until they are called to see the doctor. The news was playing on a large flat-screen TV attached to the wall. It showed a standoff between the local police and some armed man who refused to come out of his home, that eventually ended with the man giving himself up freely, and the officers took him away with no harm coming to anybody. And I thought of how things could have totally gone wrong for all those present. I wondered if this would have been the first job of my Uber wolf to come and clean up. I guess someone out there has to clean up the darkness in the world. There's terrible things that happen every day, and we try not to think about it because it's too sad. Someone needs to go in there and scrub all the evidence that this has ever happened out of existence, so we can all move forward and not have to think about it. And maybe it takes a well-adjusted, generally happy man to make all the bad and terrible things really go away. So that's it. That's the episode for another week. Thank you very much for listening to this episode. If you like this episode, then why not like and subscribe, rate and review on the very device you're using right now. That would really help me out and I would deeply appreciate it. Subscribing will keep you up to date of all past, present and future episodes so that you don't have to keep seeking it out every week using the old Google search engine. You can follow this podcast on Twitter and Facebook just by searching for Tales from the Mind Boat podcast. I'm sure you can find it. You can follow me on Twitter at Nashtopia, and you can follow me on Instagram at Trav Nash Draws Things, which is a daily art diary of things that I draw, and will also keep you up to date when a new episode drops. Theme music for this podcast is composed by Tim Witt. You can listen to his music right now on SoundCloud just by searching for Tim Witt Sounds. You can also pick up his albums for whatever you think is appropriate on Bandcamp right now, and I strongly recommend that you do this. This episode was written, produced, edited, and stuck together by me, Trav Nash. And I guess that's it for another week. Thank you again for listening to this episode. I hope you have a good week. I don't really have much to report, but until next Monday, stay safe, look after yourself, don't forget to watch Game of Thrones, and as always, peace.